are in week 8, talking about kindness. So the first question is, dun, 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 what is kindness? How would you define it? How would you define kindness?
I can tell you what it's not. It's not being not hateful.
Okay, all right.
You,
Not being
you understand that?
That's not being hateful. Gotcha. Yeah, sometimes it can be easier for us to define a word by what it's not than what it is. Anybody else want to jump in? How would you define kindness? So Luther says he'd define it by saying what it's not. It's not. Anybody else? What is kindness?
I think it's treating someone with compassion.
Okay. All right. Isn't it funny? We use a lot of words and sometimes we can't quite figure out how to define it. Sometimes it stumps us, right? And it doesn't have to be a hard word like propitiation. It could just be kindness or something. And you're like, how do you define kindness?
But the funny thing is, even though you can't really define it, you still know what it is.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. But I think what you said is good. I think what you said is useful. Absolutely. It's you said compassion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What else? Someone else. What's kindness? Define it.
Maybe we've got mute.
We can hear you, Paul.
Sorry.
That's all right. What's kindness?
I'm really sorry. I've been mumbling to myself.
I got something for you to think about while you're trying to think about that. There is John Ingalls, the fellow that I have mentioned before. He passed away a few weeks ago, and I was talking to. He and his sons go hunting all the time, and they've been calling me and my group to see if we want deer, and we have got a freezer full. But he was asking me. He said, what can we do for her to let her know that we appreciate everything that John ever did for us? Now, to me, that's thinking along the lines of kindness. I haven't figured out what to do yet, but what do you do in case like that? Or is that too far off course?
No, that's all right. We're kind of going in that direction of with some of the questions here. Let me say this, and then we'll kind of talk about. Maybe we'll talk about what you had to say there. Other definitions of kindness, along with what has already been said, would be maybe an attitude of concern or care for someone else. And I think within your question about we would say that's compassion, as Kimberly said, we'd say that's an attitude of concern or care for someone else. Another way to define it would be a sympathetic or helpful nature, personality, or character. So somebody who's sympathetic, somebody's helpful. And so along those lines, and maybe thinking about your question, what are some examples of acts of kindness that someone has showed you? So has somebody ever showed you kindness? And if so, what was it?
Well, after I had surgery, I had all kinds of people bringing me food. Just coming over to see if I needed anything.
Okay. Yeah. Bringing some food. It's just seeing if you need something. Yeah. Tim, were you going to say something?
Well, I was thinking it can be the act of being friendly, like a warm greeting. Hopefully most people get those occasionally or daily. Hi, how are you? It's good to see you. That can be an act of kindness.
Absolutely.
A genuine concern, expression of concern for others, just showing friendliness.
Yeah, absolutely. Showing friendliness. Could be holding the door for someone.
Yes.
Helping someone to carry something. Giving someone a ride.
Offering to go to the store.
Yeah, that's right. Offering to go to the store. All these would be acts of kindness. So Luther's question, now you were asking, what do you do in that situation? How do you show someone kindness in that situation?
It's been a couple or 3 weeks. I've always thought, a lot of people are going to say, at the funeral, they're going to say, we're awful sorry that this happened, But a couple of weeks after it's over, to me, that's really when the letdown is going to be. And what could you do to lift them up?
So there's a question. So what do you do to lift someone up who has, they've gone through a funeral, and it's not the day or two after, it's a couple weeks later. What's something that someone might do to show an act of kindness to that person? What do you think?
Just go visit, I think, would be a big one. I think when you experience a death, I think that's right, Luther. In the beginning, you're very busy. You have arrangements. You have all this stuff that you have to deal with. And you have all kinds of people wanting to help all over the place. And a couple of weeks later, all of a sudden, you're just kind of left and the reality sinks in.
Yeah.
And I think even then, sometimes just going and visiting and letting people know that you're still thinking about them, that you still understand that they're going through this grief.
Yeah, I think that's probably good. That's probably a good idea. Simply letting somebody know that you're there, that they're there, that you remember them. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we overlook the simple things, and we think it's not a big deal. A call, going and sitting with someone. Of course, that could be a challenge. Taking time out of your day to go actually visit someone, not just send a text. Not that a text isn't helpful, but sometimes take a time out of your day to go actually physically visit with someone. I know we've got the COVID and all that, but you could still do a drive-by kind of thing,
or drop something off on the porch. At least you're still being thought of.
Sure. And cards and all those kinds of things are helpful, but probably in that situation, if I put myself there, probably loneliness would creep in, don't you think?
Yes.
And to know that you're not alone would probably be helpful.
Well, I think if you offer, people have a tendency to say, well, is there anything I can do for you? Expecting them to say, no, I got it under control. But if they ever say, well, actually there is, I need help with, be prepared to do it.
Right. And it's hard for people to ask. It really is.
Sure. Yeah, it is hard. It is hard. But and this is getting us in all kinds of other areas, but that's okay. It's related. Thanks, Luther. Here's the thing we have to remember for ourselves. We need to make sure that we're not too proud or we're not too worried about putting someone out to ask for help or to accept help. I mean, in some ways, we have to make sure that if people offer, we shouldn't just assume, especially if it's another Christian. Kimberly, if you say, can I help you with something? I shouldn't just assume that that's a nice saying, that you're just trying to say a nice word to me. You're a Christian. I should assume you mean what you say.
Right.
And if I need help, and I know this is tough, but I should be willing to say, I do need help. I need you to do this for me. Can you do that? Now, of course, the opposite is true, has already been mentioned. If you say, can I help? And they say yes. We need to be prepared, right?
Yes.
Say what you mean what you say. Don't just use it as a kind word. We're not talking about just saying kind words. So that's important. But we need to act on those kind words as well. So that's good. I think that's a good discussion. Something good to think about. Anybody else before we start to move on?
Well, I was going to say, I think whether it's part of our culture or pride or both, that we sometimes handcuff kindness with what we're talking about. And really, I think I would see that we limit ourselves in what we can experience as Christians one with another when we don't let others help us.
Yes. Big, very, very good point. Important point. Yeah, absolutely. We limit, when we don't let people show that kindness. Absolutely. Very good.
James,
Yes.
James, over the years, I've always thought that, to me, it would be very interesting to have a comeback when somebody would ask you, "Good morning, and how are you today?" To say, "Would you have a few minutes to sit down with me and let me answer that in sincerity?"
Yeah, absolutely.
Because most of them would not be willing to really sit down and do that. They would want to do it in passing only.
Yeah, because that again, hey, if you need anything, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Is really just a greeting. It's just
Right.
how's it going? I don't really want to know. It's just a greeting. It's hi. It's kind of a way of saying hi. But no, and you know what? And this gets us into the realm of being honest with our answers as well. And again, we have to be careful because there are going to be some people just in the world, or there's going to be certain situations, certain times where it's not going to be appropriate for us to say, yeah, life is a train wreck right now. Can we talk? I mean, there's going to be those moments, we got to have some kind of discernment, right? But we should also be clear as Christians, if we get together, we're having coffee, it's an appropriate time. What I mean, you say, how you doing? We ought to be ready for somebody to say, today is a horrible day. That's how I'm doing. Can we talk about it? And it shouldn't take us off guard. It probably would, but it shouldn't. We should be prepared for those moments, and we should be prepared too to say, if you ask me how I'm doing and I'm having a bad day, and again, it's appropriate place and all of that, for me to be honest and say, you know what, I'm having a rough day. So honesty and understanding on both sides of the coin. This goes along with what Tim was saying about, allowing people to show those acts of kindness. Same thing when it comes to how are you doing. Hopefully, if you ask me how am I doing, as a Christian, you really, if I start to say I'm having a bad day, you're not like, oh, yeah, I didn't really want to know how you're doing.
How do I get out of this?
Yeah, how do I get out of this? Gotta go. Hey, I'll pray for you. See you later. Yeah, no, these are important things to think about. But again, there's always those certain situations.
Sometimes things come out of the blue from people that you don't even know that aren't, you don't know in the church. Like one day years ago when I was working in the prison, I'd had some bad news in with an event in my, and I was walking around the track. I did that every day at 11. And one day there was a man, I knew it, I'd seen him, but I didn't know his name. And he said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Can I pray with you?" And right there on the go around there at the prison, he prayed with me.
Yeah.
I really, it was, it's kind of one of those things where, are you an angel? I know you're not. I see you here every day. But I really needed that. And, I can't think of his name now, but it was just such a wonderful gesture out of the blue,
Yeah, a kindness. Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes it comes out of the blue. That I got a nurse that comes to see me once a week, and she came last week, and we talked about stuff. And matter of fact, it was the first time that I had seen her, and we talked about stuff. And she was asking me this and that, and I kind of let her know I was having a few problems. And whenever she got ready to go, she said, "We need to pray before I leave." And she walked over and took my hand and started praying. Afterwards, I said, "Do women pray in your church?" She's a Baptist, and I said, "Do they allow women to pray in your church?" And she said, "Well, not in the service, but other places, Anyway, it was she just out of the blue said, "We need to pray," and
Yeah.
after she did, I thanked her. I said, "Boy, I appreciate your attitude."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would encourage us to do that more. Instead of here would be a great encouragement, something for you to think about going forward. You're talking with someone and they're struggling or whatever, and you're going to say, "I'm going to pray for you." Why not just say, "Let's pray"? Let's take, even if it's 30 seconds or whatever it is, you can pray for them on your own afterwards. But it's already been mentioned a couple of times here how powerful that actually is, because a lot of times what we end up with is somebody saying, "I'll pray for you." And that can, and I don't know, whether or not people actually do it. I think a lot of times it's just a polite saying. It's a nice saying, "I'll pray for you. I'll be thinking about you," that kind of thing. I know there are other people who actually do it, but, to stop and say, "Why don't we just pray now? Let's just pray. I'll pray for you on my own later, but let's pray now." So I think that is powerful, and it takes people off guard. And but I think that would be all in the realm of what we're talking about here is kindness as well. And I think it would have an impact on people. Somebody's really praying for me. They're not just saying it. I mean, you see it on Facebook and social media, and people say it all the time. And again, I'm certain that, there are people who, when they say, "I'll pray for you," they really do. But I also know there's a lot of people who say that just as a polite way of saying, "Hey, I'm sorry you're suffering. I'll think about you," or, "You're on my mind," or something like that. But yeah, let's, why not just do it now? I mean, even if you're rushing out the door, let's just do it now. You got 30 seconds. Can I pray with you? Let's pray. That would be a great way to show kindness. That's for sure.
Amen.
All right. Luke chapter 10, 25 through 37. I'll read this. I've got the text up there, but again, it's probably pretty small for most of you. So Luke chapter 10, 25 through 37 says this, and behold, a lawyer stood up to put him to the test, that is, to put Jesus to the test, saying, "Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" And he said to him, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" And he answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And he said to him, "You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live." But he, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance, a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was. And when he saw him, he had compassion. There's that word that was brought up earlier. How do you define kindness? Compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. And he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back." Which of these three do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? He said, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus said to him, you go and do likewise. One of the best illustrations of human kindness is found in this story that Jesus tells of the Good Samaritan. And we want to ask the question, what makes this such a great example of kindness? Why is this story a great example of kindness?
To me, it's someone outside the kingdom or outside of Israel.
Okay, that's a good point, right? Somebody outside of Israel.
Yeah, so many things happen with other people. So much kindness, for people out there.
So, what were the Samaritans to the Jews? Anybody know the history?
Outcast.
They were outcasts. That's true. Why were they outcasts?
Half-breeds.
They were half-breeds, right? They had intermingled when Israel was taken out of the land. Those who were left, some of them, there was half, they intermarried. They also didn't believe they had a kind of a separate collection of books. They had the 5 books of Moses, but there was some differences and opinions. They worshiped on a different mountain. Their whole religious system in a lot of ways was different. But yeah, they were considered half-breeds. They were considered ungodly. They were outside the kingdom. They worshiped wrong. They worshiped God the wrong way, right? So yeah, there was a lot of problems there. There was actually a lot of animosity. There was a lot of hatred between the two groups. In fact, if you were a Jew at this time, now Samaria ran in between, like where Jerusalem was and up where Galilee and all that was in the north, and it kind of split it in two. If you were a righteous, God-fearing, law-abiding Jewish person, if you could, you would go around Samaria unless you absolutely had to go through it. That's how much they hated the Samaritans. There's a lot of ill will. There's a lot of hatred there. We read this story or we hear the Good Samaritan. We don't realize that this is kind of like the Ku Klux Klan member and the Black Panthers. Or the Black Panthers or the Black Lives Matters and the neo-Nazis. That's a bit closer to what the animosity, the hatred that would be going on between these two. To a Jew, there was no such thing as a good Samaritan. They were good for nothing. So there's a lot of power in what Jesus says here that I think sometimes we end up missing if we don't know a bit of the background. So with some of that background now, what else is going on here? Why is this such a great example of kindness? Not only was this person a foreigner, not only were they outside of the kingdom, what else is going on here?
He did something.
He did something, absolutely. The others who were part of the Jewish nation, priest, Levite, all that kind of thing, they did nothing. They walked on the other side. They wouldn't pay attention to the man who fell among the robbers. Here's this good for nothing, dirty, nasty Samaritan who does something. What's he do?
Took care of him.
Mm-hmm.
Tends to his wounds.
That's right.
Well, and not only that, he made arrangements for someone else to take care of him until he could come back.
How much did it cost the man?
2 days' wages.
Yeah, it cost him a lot. Not just, did it cost him money? The answer is yes. Did it cost him time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sometimes time is more valuable to us than money.
Sure.
This man took time to bandage someone who likely hated him. Remember, these are rival groups. These are people that typically would want nothing to do with one another. So not only does he spend time, he bandages them up, he pays money for him, he provides someone else, right? He takes care of him and provides, has somebody else come in and help take care of him as well. So he's willing to let it, he's willing to take the burden, the cost. Would you say that this is a great example of kindness?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
So,
you used the reference there, the Ku Klux Klan and black people. That'd be about the same difference. You know,
yes,
if
yeah.
a black man took care of a Ku Klux Klan man and took him to the doctor and all that kind of stuff.
That's right. I mean, it doesn't matter what group you put together. There's a bunch of them, and it doesn't matter which one you put in which area. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter which one is doing it. That's how radical this is. And Jesus tells this story. It's shocking. You know, he takes care of his enemy. I think that's one thing that we've kind of talked about here. He takes care of the needs of his enemy. So he shows kindness. So this is a great example of what kindness actually looks like. So do only great acts of kindness please God?
No.
No, I think all acts of kindness.
Okay. All acts of kindness. So it doesn't
But
matter if
that's
it's
not
a
all
small. Doesn't matter if it's a small act. It doesn't have to be something big like paying hundreds of dollars out of your pocket.
No.
No.
I think we could all agree the world needs a lot more kindness.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
in any measure, it would be welcome.
Sure. And you know, you think about like Matthew chapter 10 and verse 42, you know, think about the passage that says, even if you give someone a cup of cold water, that's something wonderful to God, right? Even a cup of cold water. That's not a big deal. That doesn't really put you out. You know what I mean? So even the small things, right? It doesn't have to be this big, you know, miraculous, big eventful kind of thing like we see. If we can do these big things, we ought to. We ought to be growing in all kinds of acts of kindness. That's true. But let's not neglect the small ones, because those small ones can be just as powerful. We've already talked about it. Sending someone a card could be just what they needed. Saying, let me pray with you, could be just what they needed. Bringing someone a meal, just what they needed. Calling them on the phone, whatever. All these, what we might consider a small thing, can be extremely powerful to someone else. And you probably have been on the other end of somebody doing something small, and yet to you it was a powerful, big deal, something really important. So let's not get sidetracked. We can do, right? Sometimes we think, oh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that big thing. Well, can you give somebody a cup of cold water?
And sometimes, you know, just a smile and a kind word to somebody that you don't even know can make a difference.
Absolutely. Smiling at someone, waving at someone, sometimes throws people
Right
off.
now, you have to have a mask on.
Well, wave to them, you know, wink at them. I don't know, you know. Yeah, no. I mean, all that kind of stuff is a big deal to some people. So it's not just the little, not just the big things. It can be the little things as well. And that's important for us to think about. All right. So according to Matthew chapter 25, 34 to 40, what does Jesus ask of us if we are to be his followers? As his followers, what does Jesus ask of us? And this is what the passage says. And the king will say, and this is Jesus telling a bit of a story here, but Jesus is teaching this. He says, the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. And the righteous will answer him and say, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. So according to Matthew 25 here, what does Jesus ask of us if we're to be his followers?
Look to others.
Yeah, look to others. Take care of those in need. Show kindness to those who are in need. Do you think that this takes maybe some, we could use the word intention, maybe being intentional about meeting the needs of people? Think about that. There's a popular phrase you might have heard. It says something like this. It says, practice random acts of kindness and senseless acts of beauty. Do you agree or disagree with that statement? What do you think? Just the way it stands, do you agree or disagree? Practice random acts of kindness and senseless acts of beauty.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
I don't either. I agree with that.
Okay. Everybody in
Not
agreement?
everything can be planned out.
Okay. All right. Would you change it in any way? And if so, how? Would you change it in any way or leave that phrase the way it is? Practice random acts of kindness and senseless acts of beauty.
I wouldn't know how you would improve it.
Well, I would say if you're going to practice, I would practice purposeful and random.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's probably better, because practice random acts of kindness. There's no, and I agree with you, Kimberly. You can't always plan everything, right? Sometimes things happen in the moment that you hadn't planned for. And so certainly you should provide for that. But I think Tim is correct there to add practice purposeful as well as random acts of kindness. But if we don't practice, in my mind, if we don't think about practicing purposefully, it could give us an excuse, or we might not think about, or we just might become lazy in doing acts of kindness. We wait till something random happens and then I'll do it. Well, we can plan for things, can't we? I mean, we can purpose to do kind things, can't we?
Right.
I
Or
mean,
maybe we could just plan to be kind always.
we could try that, sure.
You know, and pretty soon if you are always kind to others, then that kind of becomes what you do.
Sure. Yeah. Practice kindness. I'm thinking about, when we got here, there was some, I don't know if it was a whole congregation, maybe it was a whole congregation. There were bags that were made up for people who are homeless on the street, and they were filled with all kinds of things. Is that a random act of kindness, or is that a purposed act of kindness? It has to be.
It was a purposed act of kindness.
Yes.
And we gave those out randomly.
Yeah, right. Because when
we saw the need, but we were prepared. Yeah. I mean, we were prepared to do that.
Yes. That's the point, right? Prepare to do good things. But sometimes if you randomly saw somebody on the street, you could be like, I wish I had something to give them. But if you're prepared, and that's just one example. And again, it's not wrong to say we want to be, in the moment, there's going to be things that come up that that were unforeseen, so random acts of kindness are great. But I think we also ought to be thinking about practicing purposeful acts of kindness as well. So that leads us to our homework question. Think about what's one act of kindness that you will perform this week. Maybe be purposeful this week. Take a moment, take a day, maybe tomorrow or the next day or something, or when you're eating lunch or dinner, and think, how can I be purposeful? How can I do something kind? So be open to the random things, but purpose. Is there somebody I know that's hurting, that's in need? Is there somebody that I can be kind to today? Maybe it's somebody in the body of Christ. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a stranger. Maybe it's somebody at the gas station. Maybe it's somebody who serves your coffee or whatever it happens to be. Maybe it's a coworker or something like that. But, think about planning. Just this week, think about, I want to purposefully be kind to someone. How can I do that? And what can I do? And plan for that. And I think if we begin to do these kinds of things, what you said, Kimberly, it'll become our norm. We might not have to give as much thought to it over time. We'll kind of be looking for it. We'll kind of be preparing for those moments of kindness just as life kind of pops up. But something to think about.
And after you do it, forget about it.
Yeah, right. Move on. Yeah, move on. You don't have to post it on Facebook. Just put that out there, okay? I mean, it's great to, to let people know you did. That's fine. Okay. But they don't all have to be promotional. You don't have to post it. You don't have to tell anybody. God knows, right? Don't let your, right hand know what your left hand's doing, that kind of thing. So you're right. You're right, Luther. Forget about it and then move on, do something else. Okay. Last thoughts, questions, comments.
On that right there, I had a young lady had just gotten married, and they didn't have very much money, and they just barely getting by. And they stopped and knocked on my door one night, and she's not somebody that I had a whole lot of interaction with, but she said, I need $40. And I said, well, let me see. And I went ahead and checked. I had $40, and I just gave it to her. And I told my wife, I said, she swore up and down that she would give it back to me in a couple of weeks. I said, as of now, I'm forgetting about it, because I didn't figure she would. And if she did, that's fine. And it's not something I'll held against her, And
Right.
you do something like that and then forget about it. I mean, you never forget it, but I mean, it's just, that's in the past.
Yeah, right. You move on. Yeah, you move on. You're not concerned about it, holding that against them or anything like that. Yeah. No, that's great. I appreciate that.
And I remember one time, it's been a few years ago, one of the other board members and we were ringing the bell at Christmas time for the women's shelter, but we were ringing the bell outside of one of the gas stations. And it was probably the coldest day of the year that year. And somebody had gone in, and when they came out, they put some money in our bucket and left. And right after that, the gas station worker person came out with 2 cups of hot chocolate. And he said, that man told me that as soon as he left to bring this to you. And that was a very little thing. And we could have very well just went in and got it ourselves, but it was just something that he didn't know who we were. But that was something I always remember that somebody did for me.
Yeah, a little cup of cold water, in that situation, a little cup of hot water.
Right.